Hello, welcome back for another episode of Step Stories. Today, I have a fascinating guest with me named Rob Scheer. Hi, Rob.
Well, hi, Robin. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me today. I'm so glad to finally meet you. I've heard a lot about you, and I just wanted to start off by telling our listeners a few things about you, and then I would love you to expand on everything. So, sound
Sure.
good?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I wanted to read this because your bio starts off with such um, a statement that grabs your attention. Um, at any given time, there are more than 330,000 youth in foster care in the United States. An estimated 700 children enter the system each day, and most arrive with little more than the clothes on their backs. Those who do have belongings are often given a trash bag in which to pack up and carry their life's treasures. Just so sad. Rob experienced this indignity firsthand. He entered foster care and walked up to his foster home carrying a tattered and torn trash bag. He aged out of foster care at the age of 18, became homeless, and again carried his possessions in a trash bag. So, wow, those are some troubling images.
Yeah, but the sad part is, Robin, is that it's happening every single day within our country, and we're not talking about it. We talk about the fact that people want to continuously talk about the gangs within our communities that are growing. We want to talk about the people who are experiencing homelessness, but let me explain how those people got there, Robin. They got there because we created them. We created them, and that's our kids who are in foster care. They average out of this, they age out of the system. We do basically nothing. When they are coming into the system, we ride in on that white horse and act like, oh, let's save all those cute babies. But then when they become teenagers, we become that they're a problem to us. And so we
Mm,
just push them out, just like they did me.
it's awful. So, how did this all start for you? Where are you from, and what
Yeah,
happened in
so
your family?
my
Yeah.
story's not like most stories, and by the way, I used to say that all the time, but the more I continue to tell my story and I hear other people telling their stories, there's a lot of kids out there that were just like me who were floundering in a system that was created to take care of kids like me. Back in the 70s, I started hearing about foster care as a young boy. I was the youngest of 10 kids. My mother had been married 6 times. We lived in and out of every shelter. Um, Stability wasn't something that was in my home. Instead, it was just the drug addiction and the, you know, mental health issues and the cigarettes my parents would put out on us. It was really bad. And brothers and sisters started falling to the wayside: teenage pregnancy, drug addiction, incarceration. And before you know it, I entered foster care. Age of 12, handed a trash bag and was put in a house of strangers, expecting me to assimilate just like that. Little did I know I would never see my brothers and sisters again.
Mm,
I would never talk to my mom and dad again. They would die.
no.
The whole entire system is created to take care of us, but nobody bothers to see the pain that it has caused us. And again, I hear people judge my mom and dad all the time, but I remind all your listeners and your viewers that they were my parents. They were my parents. And I loved them. But for me, they couldn't take care of me. So when I went in that house of strangers, I decided not to be that kid. I didn't want to be the kid that put the F word in front of his name. And because by the way, my foster parents, they would tell people all the time, "Oh, these are our biological kids, and that's our foster kid."
Oh.
And they wouldn't, I never, from the time I was 12 until I was 18, I've been able to locate 2 pictures of me. Because when they did family portraits, I never was brought on. And that's typical for kids in foster care. And then the fall of 1984, I was a senior in high school. It was the fall. I had been only a month and a half into my senior year, and I walked into my front door. And by the way, I called them mom and dad because I've been living there for so long. They were my parents, I thought.
Hmm.
And instead, when I walked into the house, Robin, they handed me my trash bag. And they told me that since they weren't going to receive a check since I was 18, that I literally had to leave. And I became homeless.
Oh my gosh. That is the most heartbreaking story I think I've heard. I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah. I look back now and I was angry. God, I was so angry.
I
I
don't
was
blame
angry at
you.
them. And then I proceeded to make the decision not to let that system define me. So I walked into school every day. I hid my trash bag behind the bush. Kids would push me in lockers, spit on me. Teachers knew about it, by the way. And I remember I would sit in my English class and the guidance counselor would come in and they would pull kids out, and they never once pulled me out. And I know why, because if they stopped, if they looked at me, if they acknowledged me, they'd have to accept they failed me. They failed me. And I
Mm,
remember I finally made it. It was graduation day, and I was scrawny, long hair. I made it. And I remember I
mm.
went down to the front desk and I asked to borrow a cap and gown. I didn't even have the money I think it was like $20 to rent one. I didn't even have that. And they found me a cap and gown and I went and put it on. And at that point, I remember standing in the auditorium and I could hear the auditorium just screaming and clapping. And then they called my name. Silence. I didn't hear anything.
Mm.
And at that moment, when I l crossed that stage, I never went back to my seat. I left and went back to the back parking lot, and I truly sat down and I cried. I cried for my mom and dad. I wanted to feel that cigarette so bad, because if at least my dad was burning me, at least he was there. I cried for my foster parents. I couldn't believe that out of all those years, and by the way, I wasn't that kid. I got good grades. I went to church every Sunday like they told me to. We were devoted Mormons. I thought that that was life for me, and they gave up on me because of a check. And then I cried for all of you, the people that did not even think that this young boy who had worked so hard his entire life just to be acknowledged. But at that moment, I realized that society, you only give kids in foster care three choices, and that's it. Choice number one, we give up. Suicide rate in foster care is higher than we have ever seen. Choice
Mm.
number two, we give in. We do exactly what you expect of us. We commit the petty crimes. We fill your detention centers. And by the way, as we're having this conversation today, close to 80% of our death row inmates were either in or touched by foster care. If
Mm.
that doesn't tell you this is a system that is shattered, nothing else will. But for me, it was about choice number three, and that's give it all we got. And that's what I did. I actually joined the United States Navy, and I did not join the Navy to take care of you. I joined the Navy because this boy was hungry, and I built a future, and I built a very successful future.
Wow, Rob, that's just an incredible story. And I just want to first of all applaud you for taking the third choice and for finding your way. That takes so much strength.
Yeah.
I want to kind of go back
Sure.
because that was just so much to take in. Um, what your brothers and sisters, did they all get farmed out to foster care? I mean, you were the youngest of
So
10, so some of them presumably were old enough
most of
not
them.
to go to foster care,
Most
right?
of them, except for 3. There were 3 of us that were still minors. Everybody else was 17 or above. And my brothers and sisters didn't make it. They the only ones that are alive, there's 4 of us that are still alive out of 10, and my brothers and sisters died of suicide, drug addiction, cancer. I have a brother who's serving life in prison right now. I have another brother who chooses to be homeless. And I say that because people used to say to me all the time, my mother was a product of her environment. She had been married 6 times, had 10 kids. And I'm sorry to say this, but that's not true. You know, we are not in part of our environment. We are part of choices. Choices. And the fact is these choices are not always easy. And my mother didn't make the right choices. And I'm not sitting here belittling her for it, but she was a product of her choices. I have made the choice not to allow the system to define me. I choose to define the system.
Mm. So your mother was married 6 times. So out of the 10 kids, out of your 10 brothers and sisters, how many were from the same father that you had?
So up until COVID, I thought my sister and I had the same dad. Until COVID, and we did the ancestry DNA. And by the way, I didn't want to do it. And I didn't want to do it because I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew that my sister wasn't 100% my biological sister. I knew we didn't have the same mom and dad. I knew that this was going to devastate my sister. And by the way, it did. It
Mm.
devastated my sister to, yeah, my sister, she hasn't been able to recover from that. And so it's hard. It's hard, when kids just they want a connection, they want an assembly of somebody wanting them. I have 5 kids now. All of my kids, Robin, arrived from the foster care system. All 5 of my kids arrived at my front door carrying a trash bag. All 5 of my kids came to me with trauma, with no type of hope for their future. But what I gave each one of those kids was an opportunity to have a system not define who they are. And as I met my fifth son, he was 18 years old, by the way, which is unheard of for
Mm.
someone to adopt an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And when I met my 18-year-old son, he had been in the system since he was 5. We had failed this young boy, 11 homes, 6 schools, 18, getting ready, 3 months from getting ready to be aged out of the system. And I thought to myself, we can either give up on this kid and let him be a statistic, or I can give him the future that I know my husband and I could give him. So when my kids met him and asked if he could come and live with us, we did what we would do, which is Scheers, we adopted him. So what I say, and the reason I say that, Robin, is the fact is that there are kids all over this country that just need one adult to love and care for them, just like
Mhm.
that's all I needed.
Mm. And I understand that when your children arrived, they were also carrying their belongings in trash bags,
It
and you were
shocked
just
me.
floored, shocked.
Floored me. 17 and a half years ago. So my husband and I were living in DC. I had become a very successful businessman. I never looked back. I realized what was important for me, 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 me. I bought a really big house, a house that people would walk by and they'd be like, "Ooh, whoever lives in that house, they're successful." I bought a really expensive car. I bought 2 of them because when I pulled up at the stoplight, I wanted people to look at me. I
Mm,
wanted people to say, "Wow, that guy's successful." But what I realized that my whole life, I just wanted to be a dad, a dad. So when
mm.
Reese and I started to build our family through foster care, the kids started arriving. And within a matter of 3 months, we had 4 kids. They were 2, 4, 2, and 6 months.
Wow.
So 2 sets of siblings arrived. But when they arrived carrying trash bags, I remember looking at the social worker and saying, "Are you kidding me?" And she's like, "What?" I was like, "You're telling me that after all of these years that I've been in the system, that we still carry trash bags?" And she was like, "Well, what should we be carrying?" And I was like, "How about some dignity?" But, to me, it was just about being a dad. And my daughter, oh my gosh, my beautiful, beautiful daughter. And by the way, I'm a daughter to only one girl. I have 4 boys. I've raised my daughter as a princess because she will be a queen one day. Um, and I remind people all the time, women rule this world. We men just don't realize it. But for my daughter, she was
Oh,
so
yeah.
yes. My daughter, she was so sad, and I remember saying to Reese, "I don't think she's ever gonna smile." And she had come out of the bathtub, and she had gotten into her new bedroom, and Reese had laid 3 brand new nightgowns on the bed, and she had walked over and picked one of the nightgowns up, and she tore the tag off of it, and she turned around, she smiled at me for the very first time, and I said, "Amaya, why are you smiling?" And she was like, "Mr. Rob, I've never owned a new pair of pajamas." I was just like, "Wow." Yeah.
Mm.
Those small little things, Robin. My teeth. By the way, my teeth are beautiful. They cost me so much money because kids in foster care, toothbrushes is just something that just doesn't happen.
This is just pathetic to hear, and, you're not the first foster parent I've had on, actually. It's funny, this is supposed to be step stories, and I love the fact that this podcast has morphed into not just step stories, also blended families that are of any, shape and form because families no longer are just this traditional thing you think about. They come in all forms. And the bottom line, the most important thing is to have love and consistency, which you clearly have given. And so I want to talk just a little bit of an aside here about you before we kind of get
What?
into some questions I want to ask you. Yes, because I know you developed and started a business called Comfort Cases, which
Uh,
was related to these kids showing up with their trash bags and you having had the trash bag. So, and I want you to talk about it, but I just want to say that Comfort Cases has become a huge success. And you've been featured on the Ellen Show, the Today Show, The View, NBC Nightly News, and you were named one of CNN's heroes because of all
yeah,
of this. So, tell
crazy.
it. I want to hear about Comfort Cases.
You know, it's so crazy. So I was sitting in my office about 14 years ago. And by the way, I'm a banker by trade. I was a banker for 28 years. And I remember I was sitting in my office and my husband had given up his career to be a stay at home dad. And at that time, we only had the four kids and we had adopted them. And we had, of course, I did exactly what you would expect. I got them designer clothes, passports, all about the material things. And then I realized 14 years ago that I had failed my kids as a parent. I was so concerned that my kids to have all the things that I didn't have as a young boy that I forgot to teach them two of the most important things. And by the way, as parents, it is our responsibility to teach our kids two of the most important things for them to use the rest of their life. Number one, their legacy. All of us must understand is that our legacy is about what we give and not what we take. And then also empathy. See, empathy's not in our DNA, empathy's taught. And so for me, I really weighed heavy on my heart about those two things. And my husband had come into my office and we were planning a toy drive. We would do it every year with my company. I had companies all over the country, and all my employees would, participate. And, we'd feel good about ourselves. We pat ourselves on the back because we got all those needy kids, those toys. And I remember Reece walked into my office and I said, Reece, we're failing our kids. And he's like, what are you talking about? Our kids are great. And I said, no, we forgot to teach our kids two of the most important things. And as I said that, I said, Reece, let's try to eliminate trash bags in foster care in DC. He really looked at me, Robin, and he's like, you're BS crazy. And he's like, I was like, I know. I was like, that's why you married me. I was like, let's do it. So we gathered members of our church, some local politicians, my senior staff, and I shared the story for the first time of a 12-year-old little boy who had walked into foster care and how a trash bag tried to define who he was, and about how all those years had passed and he didn't allow that trash bag to find him. But then when my four kids arrived, each one of them again had a trash bag.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, how could we truly say that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as humans? Nelson Mandela said it so clearly to each and every one of us. Every single human in society are judged by the way they treat their children.
Mm.
Kids in foster care, Robin, they don't belong to you. They don't belong to me. They belong to us, to us. And the way we were treating them, not on my watch. So we grabbed a backpack, and in that backpack, I wanted to make sure that every kid got a brand new pair of pajamas with a tag on it. I want every kid to get their own lotion, their own shampoo, and their own conditioner, and their own bar of soap. Kids walk into a house of strangers. You expect them to assimilate like that. And let me explain something to everyone. Most of everybody that is watching your podcast or listening to your podcast have stayed in a hotel within their lifetime. When they stay in those hotels, they walk into those rooms, and the one thing we all get, and that is a brand new bar of soap. The reason we get that brand new bar of soap is because it's called dignity. We would never use the bar of soap from the strangers before us in that hotel room. But instead, we expect kids to assimilate like that. Not on my watch. I want every kid to get a toothbrush and toothpaste. I want every kid to get an activity, a book. I want every kid to get a stuffed animal because I don't care whether you're a newborn or you're 59, we all love a good stuffed animal. And then finally, my son Grayson, he was 5 years old when we packed our very first case. Robin, he's now 19. He said, Daddy, we have to put a blankie in every case. And I was like, a blankie? I was like, Grayson, the kids are not cold. He was like, I know, Daddy, but every time they wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them. Wow. That's exactly what we want. We want to be loved. We want to know we matter.
Yeah.
So with that, we packed a case and another and another. And in the last 14 years, because of amazing humans like you who've given us an amazing platform like this, we have packed and delivered over 320,000 backpacks. We have
Wow.
delivered them to all 50
Amazing.
states, DC, and Puerto Rico. And I know I do not need to remind all your smart viewers, Puerto Rico belongs to us. Yes, it's surrounded by water, but so is Hawaii. See, our forefathers, they actually built communities for one reason, and it wasn't for our bushes to match. It was for us to take care of each other. And that's something we have forgotten. So for me, it was that 14 years ago to teach my kids that truly we all stand next to each other and we all push the mountain at the same time, the mountain will move. I know that.
You're just talking to my heart. I just, not only about these foster kids, but loving your family. I keep something right by my kitchen sink that says, from Mother Teresa, a quote that says, if you want to help world peace, go home and love your family. And I just love that. And yeah. One of the things I try to do as an aside is to promote kindness on this
Oh,
episode and standing side by side and pushing the mountain together. I'm never going to forget that quote because yeah, every day feels like a fight against division. And anyway, that's getting philosophical and political. But I want to say, anybody listening will not be surprised to hear that you also have a podcast called Fostering Change. You are an excellent speaker and you discuss foster care and adoption and LGBTQ plus issues. And you're also the author of A Forever Family, Fostering Change One Child at a Time. And that's about your journey, your journey from foster care to being a foster parent. So anyway, we'll put all that later in the show notes, but
sure.
I still want to ask you a lot of questions. I
Oh my
want to.
gosh, I have tons of questions, tons of answers for you. But you know what, Robin? I want to jump in real quick because I want
Okay.
to, you know, and if you look behind me, these are our kids on the wall behind me. Okay. And as you can see, I have 5 kids, not four. So when our kids arrived, Amaya and Makai arrived first. They were 4 and 2. And then 3 months later, Grayson and Tristan arrived. They were 2 and 6 months. And so as the years went by, we adopted them, as I said, we started comfort cases. I realized that, you know what, my kids were so amazing that, it wasn't about all the things that I thought that they had to have. And it wasn't until 2019. So I had given up my career to be a public speaker. Derek Jeter had published my memoir and said, you know what? You should try to do this. And by the way, I'd never spoken in public just to my staff. And I
Wait,
remember when I
Derek Jeter published your memoir?
Derek Jeter. So
Oh, wow.
So I remember when I went on my book tour, I had told my business partners that I really wanted to, take a leave of absence and I would be back. And I remember when I was out there, I realized that I no longer wanted a job. I wanted a purpose. And so I came back to my hometown, living right outside of DC, and I walked into a high school. And I told my story. And a young boy walked up to me and he said, Mr. Scheer, will you sign my book? And I said, of course. What is your name? And he said, Alex. I said, Alex, tell me something about yourself. He says, I have nothing to tell. I said, Alex,
Mm.
you all have a story. He said, no, my story's like yours. Again, been in foster care since he was 5, all these homes. I went, met him, brought him to our home. My kids wanted to meet him. We would go out to dinner, and I'm not even kidding you. When I realized I'd done my job as a parent, we were sitting in a restaurant meeting Alex for the very first time. And my son Tristan, who was 10 at the time, looks over at Alex and he says, Alex, you can order anything off the menus, and my dads don't care. And he was like, I couldn't order anything. And he was like, I'm getting the shrimp fajitas. And if I don't eat them all, I never get in trouble. My daughter and I looked at Alex and said, Alex, haven't you been to Guapo's? And Alex looked at my kids and said, I don't remember the last time somebody took me to a restaurant. At that moment, as a dad, I did my job. I saw the empathy flow out of my kids' eyes as we ate, went to Dave and Buster's, dropped Alex off at his foster parents' house. I get in the car and the car's quiet. And one of the kids said, Dad, we have to do something for Alex. And I said, guys, I know, I don't know what to do. And they said, we have to bring him home. So when Reece said, what's one more? I will explain something, Robin. My husband and I were the very first couple in the state of Maryland to petition the courts to have a child from foster care live with us without a stipend. The judge looked at me and said, Mr. Scheer, why would you do this? I say to the judge, as I say to all of your listeners, every child deserves a foundation. Every child deserves to know there's someone there rooting them on. Every child deserves to feel, what does it feel like when someone loves me unconditionally? I looked at my son. He was crying. He said, Pops, you've changed my life.
Mm.
I said, no, buddy. I said, you changed our lives. I said, I only have one regret. The judge said, Mr. Scheer, what is your regret? I said, I didn't get to walk him to kindergarten, but now I get to walk with him for the rest of his life. A year after that, Robin, we were in the height of COVID. My son walked up to me and he said, Pops, will you adopt me? I said, Alex, you're not going anywhere. And he's like, no, I want the same last name as my sister and brothers and as you and Dada. I called my adoption attorney and we adopted Alex. Our kids are now 26, 22, 19, 19, and 17.
Wow. What an incredible person you are. I just keep using the word incredible, and that's not very imaginative, but that's the thing that just keeps coming to mind over and over. You're an amazing human. And okay, so I want to ask you some questions about parenting these children who've come from trauma,
Yes.
like yourself. I mean, how much do you draw upon your own experiences?
Every
How
day.
do you, yeah, every day.
Every day, every day. I mean, by the way, that's what we all can do. We can only draw from our experiences. And so I remember when they handed Makai, my husband, when the kids arrived, and I was so jealous. The way I saw my husband look at our son, because he immediately had that dad attachment. I didn't, because I didn't
Mm.
know what a dad was supposed to be. My husband had the most amazing father in the world. My father in law, God rest his soul, he was the most amazing human in the world. He really taught my husband how to be a father. I didn't have that. So every day I'm trying to go to that. Every day I'm looking at it. But I'm also saying to myself, as I say to our kids, we have to give each other grace. We have to give each other grace because sometimes we don't know how to deal with things because we don't know. And it doesn't matter how old my kids were when they came to us, they came with trauma. And that trauma will come out at any time of their life. And by the way, it has. Whether it's been their teenage years for a couple of my kids or my one son, he was in his early 20s when we found out he had schizophrenia. It happens. But what I always say is my love is unconditionally for our kids. And so no matter what they have brought to the table, we're going to stand there next to them. No matter how hard it is, we're going to be the parents that they deserve.
Well, how did you create a sense of belonging for everybody in your family? And also, I know that your children came from different racial backgrounds. Like,
Yeah.
how did you integrate all that? What did you learn from that? All of that.
So I first have to say, we started our journey with forgiveness. Okay. And let me explain to you that. I forgave my parents. I forgave my community and all that anger I had with them. Yeah, I was angry. And I'll explain to you the reason why. I've learned on this journey, I was angry with them because they weren't educated about me. Just like society's not educated about most kids in foster care. And so that's what we're doing. We're forgiving our society for not educating them about us, but now we're going in society and we're going to educate them. And then I also remind my kids all the time is that when people walk up to us and say, "Look at that beautiful family, I don't even see any color." I want you to remind them, "Then you don't see my 4 black kids." Because at the end of the day, we are 2 white men raising 4 black kids in society. Not easy. When I raise my white kid, I do not have to teach him how to drive the way I had to raise my black boys. So again, it's just all about making sure that our kids understand that they have the opportunity to write the pages of their book.
Well, how did you learn? And I've heard so many times, black mothers of black teenage boys, they do talk to them about driving, and which is just pathetic to begin with. But how did you become informed and know how to do that and know what to say?
You know, how did I Okay, first of all, I have to say this and you're gonna laugh about this. I love my therapist. Um,
I was going to ask you how you just became so, perfect. How much
so
therapy did you have to have? It must have
oh
been a lot.
god. Um, so those who read my book, A Forever Family, will see I've had 4 attempted suicide attempts in my life.
Oh.
Addicted with addiction. I felt like nobody loved me. And I remember it was my 4th suicide attempt. I woke up in the hospital and I looked up and I was like, "God, you can't even get this right." And at that moment, I realized that, you know what? My life was supposed to be something different. And it all started with forgiveness. Forgiveness again. I forgave my parents for the abuse that they caused me. I gave society for forgetting me. But what I remind everybody is forgiveness is not for other people. Forgiveness is for you. It's to bring the power back to you. So when I forgave and I felt that power, it was eye opening.
Hmm.
And then I absorbed everything. Everything. Robin, I will have to tell you that The thing about being a dad when you're in this growing up in the system, I said this to you a minute ago about giving grace, but I have to tell you, for me, it's been my kids. My kids have taught me so much.
Mm.
My kids have taught me that it's okay to fall. My kids they have taught me they said, Dad, it's not about you being perfect. It's about you being consistent. Think about that. That's what
It's
we all
absolutely
want.
true. Of
Yeah.
course.
It's not
And
about being
genuine and
perfect.
genuine and authentic and being there, being available, right?
Exactly.
Rob, I want to just jump back just because I'm just curious.
Sure.
Were your parents abused also? Is that, I mean, is this just the generational thing? And I like to say breaking the chain that
Oh,
you
no,
have
breaking the
done.
chain. Breaking the
Yeah.
chain. I have a friend of mine, he has a nonprofit called Breaking the Chain, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
And it's all because of that. And you
mhm.
know, you say that though, Robin, just the other day, my daughter and I, we were in the kitchen and we were talking about one of her sisters. She has biological, you know, because understanding my kids, they have a lot of other kids, biological, and we're really big believers that mm, our children need to know their life story because what we will never have is our kids ever saying to us, "You kept us from." No, they know where their parents are. They know about their biological siblings. They know all about biological families. And also, by the way, their biological family's been a part of their lives. Because we say this quite often, if your table's not big enough, build a bigger table. Every single person should be invited to your table as long as they can respect you, as long as they can break bread and talk to you in a way that we all should talk to each other. So that's been something for birth family for us. But why I say that is because my daughter said to me the other day, she said, you know, Dad, she says, I'm 22. She was getting ready to turn 22 like last week. She's like, you know, I've been ready to turn 22. And she's like, and you know, I've no desire to have a kid anytime in the near future. And I said, I know. And she says, you know, that's not like the way I was raised. And I was like, "But you were raised, you know, with us." And she's like, "Yeah, but looking at my sisters," she's like, "They're already having kids." Wow.
Mm.
So, breaking the chain.
Mhm. Mhm. And wanting to be intentional about having children and how she's gonna do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And none of my kids, although so the fact is each one of our kids are making that conscious effort not to repeat the cycle that they came from. Just like
Mhm.
I did the same thing, you know? And my kids are doing that as well.
What how has your definition of family changed throughout your life? I mean, what would you say to someone struggling to define what family means in their own life?
Look in the mirror and realize family is defined by you. By you. No one else can define family but you. And for me, my family totally looks different. We're different colors, different shapes, different sizes, and we love differently. We love differently. But the thing we all have in common is that we truly believe that when you love someone, you love them with all your heart. But I also remind people all over this country and now all over the world, always remember, Robin, you do not have to know someone to love someone. Think about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Although I have to say that, of course, I agree with you, but I've been watching all the people that are in our country right now for the World Cup. And it's been such a wonderful thing to see so many Instagram posts of people just saying, wow, I've only thought of Americans in the United States by what I've seen in the media, what I've heard. And now that we're here, wow, I have a different impression. It's so
Yeah.
much better than I thought. People are nice. And I keep thinking to myself, actually, if people could get to know the other, somebody that they've been told is different, somebody that they've been told to hate or judge, but they don't actually know those people. Once they do, once they have met somebody else and realize what they've thought, what they've been told is not the truth, how different our world would be. So
Mhm.
I agree with what you're saying, and I also want to add the opposite of you don't have to know somebody to love them, but boy, if you could take the time to know somebody, you might love them too,
Agree.
right?
I agree. I mean, I agree, and I love what you just said, though, Robin, because I do think that so many times if we would put our guard down and really get to know each other, we would all realize we have so much more in common than we
Mhm.
do, that's not in common.
Yeah.
Uh, and just because how we turn that knob in the ballot box, not always makes us as different as we think we are.
Mhm. That's correct.
Yeah. Well,
So, well, what is the most important lesson your children have taught you? If there's one or more.
that's a touchy thing right now.
Oh.
And the reason it is because when you have kids who you adopt through the system, you have to accept all the good, all the bad, all the everything. And just this last weekend, my son my son came to us with fetal alcohol syndrome. We were told that he was probably never going to talk. And when he was 5 years old, we were actually told that we should actually institutionalize him. My husband and I were adamant that we weren't going to see only this from Makai. And the reason I get a little bit of emotional is that over the weekend, my son Makai, who, by the way, graduated high school when they said he never would, got his
Mm.
driver's license when they said he never would, got accepted to college when they said he never would, um, said to me just this past weekend that he said, "Dad, thank you." And I said, "For what, Bubba?" And he said, "For never giving up on me." That is the reward right there, Robin, that he felt. Not that he saw, that he felt that I had never given up on him. What other thing could you want as a parent?
Right.
So that was it.
Mm. So don't ever give up. Don't ever give up on them. Yeah, that's a wonderful lesson
Thank you.
to just have in real time, not just an idea. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of the episode, and this has gone by so quickly. I've just loved talking to you. You're really a wonderful speaker and have so much to share. And do you have any final words of wisdom you might leave with our listeners as it relates to blending a family?
Yes, yes. Listen, I said this earlier. Um, if your table's not big enough, build a bigger table. But I want you all to look at the fact that all of our families look different. Whether your family was built through foster care, whether your family was built through surrogacy, whether your family was built through step families, each and every one of us have the opportunity to love. And for me, that's the most important thing, Robin. Family is my everything. When you walk into my house, it's on our walls, it's everywhere because I always wanted a family. And now I have one. And I say this quite often, my family's not done because you're all invited to my table as well.
Love that. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for sharing that. And I can't wait to start listening regularly to your show. And I hope that everybody else will too. We're going to have all your information, and please share Step Stories and Rob's podcast, Fostering Change, and buy his book, his memoir. And also, please follow both of us on Instagram and Facebook. And thanks again, Rob.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank
Have a great one.
you too.